It seems like every time Marcus Freeman makes a controversial statement, Ohio State's name is right in the middle of it. Why is that? Well, I'll tell you right here on Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes, part of Locked on Podcast Network. And I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Friday, June 17th in the year 2022, and today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked on sent you. I would also like to thank you for making Locked on Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. On today's episode, we continue our Buckeye road trip around the NFL, getting upcoming season expectations for Mr. Marshon Lattimore of the New Orleans Saints. Ross Jackson of Locked on Saints joins us for that. And also expectations for Mr. JK Dobbins. Kevin Oestreicher from Locked on Ravens joins us for that. But before we get to any of that, Marcus Freeman is a man people in the media want to talk about. He's a new Notre Dame coach, a high-profile job, has a huge opportunity week one of the upcoming season to make his mark and cement and have a signature win in his first regular season game as Notre Dame head coach. In an interview with Dennis Dodd from CBS Sports, he was misquoted. And I'm not going to look at what he said and say that he was misquoted or not. Like, it's true. It happened. They have since changed things. But I think Marcus Freeman is doing something that's going to help Notre Dame right now and also help Ohio State at the same time. In this interview, this is what Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports originally said Marcus Freeman said. And this is talking about academics at the two schools, Notre Dame and Ohio State, and comparing the two. Here's what Marcus Freeman, or what CBS Sports said. Freeman said, quote, "I'm not saying from top to bottom, but the majority of our kids, I want to say this the right way, are pushed to learn, and their study habits are formulated every day. You can't cheat academics at Notre Dame. You don't go to class at places like that. Okay, take some online classes, show up for your appointments. At Notre Dame, you're forced every day to go to class." And on the surface, that sounds trash. You don't go to class at places like that. Now, he is talked about and he mentions specifically Ohio State and Cincinnati. But in context, he's talking about how large the schools are in comparison to how small Notre Dame is. Ohio State has about 60,000 students. I want to say Cincinnati was about 40,000 students. Notre Dame has about 8,500. Notre Dame also has recently started having online classes, where the other two schools, they have offered online classes for quite a long time. Marcus Freeman says if you don't go to places like that, if you don't go to class at places like that, you have the opportunity to take online classes, where at Notre Dame, it's a new thing. So adding the if in there is huge, but I don't want to focus on him being quoted or misquoted at all, properly or improperly. Marcus Freeman is going to continue to be on the interview trail. He was on Trent Dilfer's podcast. He had about 35 minutes there. He is going to continue to be a man that people are going to want to go after because, one, he is willing to talk, and two, he is going to say something that'll help them get clicks. He is also helping Ohio State right now. He is adding more buzz. He is adding more spotlight. He is adding more eyeballs. He is adding more pins that are going to be written, and people are going to write articles about the Ohio State-Notre Dame game week number 1. Am I glad that he corrected himself? And honestly, he reached out to 97.1 The Fan WBNS in Columbus and actually went on the radio station to clarify what he said. Marcus Freeman actually went back to the interview with Dennis Dodd, reviewed the audio, and clarified what he said on the radio station to clear up any mistakes or mishaps that came from him being misquoted. But honestly, I don't agree with with him being misquoted. I don't even firmly really agree with him comparing the two schools and universities academically in this way, because everybody knows Notre Dame's academic standards are high, extremely high. Not saying Ohio State's academic standards aren't high, but Notre Dame's are at a different level. Everybody knows that. In recruiting, we talked a lot of recruiting with John Garcia Jr. Part of the reason that Notre Dame recruits the way that it does is because they know not every athlete can academically qualify to get into Notre Dame. These are just cold, hard facts. So I don't really care about the comparison. I really wish he would not have even used those two schools. Now, why didn't he use a school like Purdue or Kent State, schools that he also has coached at previously? Why is it Cincinnati? Well, he just came from there. At Ohio State, he played there, but he has had other stops along the way at other universities. But if he's going to continue to be the guy going around the country, having people from CBS Sports or maybe even Yahoo or the worldwide leader, or maybe even Locked On itself, and people saying, hey, Marcus Freeman, we want to get an interview with you. You know Marcus Freeman is going to do two things. One, he is going to talk. But then two, he is going to do something in his own way to promote and to push the week one matchup between Ohio State and Notre Dame. And I'm here for it. Also, he needs to be very, very careful. Very, very careful. He was able to clear things up this time. What happens the next time? He may not say Ohio State. He may say somebody else, and he reaches out to come on the radio show or do an article with somebody, and all of a sudden does more damage than good. Be very, very careful what you say. Very careful. Because you have no idea, one, how it'll be perceived. And even if you try in that moment to say it the right way, you may say it the right way. That does not mean somebody else might not have an agenda or might have an agenda to where they are ultimately going to take whatever you say and twist it for their own personal gain. Marcus Freeman, if this is what he wants to do to promote the week one matchup between Ohio State and Notre Dame, be my guest. But also be careful. Be careful. Because, buddy, you might be adding fuel to the fire. You might be adding bulletin board material. Be very, very careful what you say, because you don't know what's going to happen on September the 3rd. I'm also reminded of someone about a year ago who gave Ohio State bulletin board material and ultimately capitalized during that game Thanksgiving weekend. Don't think it's going to happen week number one. I also don't want that to be the outcome. Harbaugh gave Ohio State bulletin board material and ultimately laid the smackdown, the beatdown on the Buckeyes. I'm not here for that to happen with Marcus Freeman. Because if he's talking now, buddy, just you wait. He's going to be talking a whole lot more of the Irish win, the week one matchup with the Buckeyes. We have all loved talking about the controversial stuff with Marcus Freeman, but we also love talking about former Buckeyes that are now in the NFL. What are some upcoming season expectations for Mr. Marshon Lattimore down in the Bayou? We'll tell you right here. Next. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting, stats, and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's NBA Finals matchup, the Stanley Cup Finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet online, where the game starts. We have an important favor to ask you. We put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcast. Go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey, you'll like this part, can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. Thanks for your help. The Buckeye road trip around the NFL continues. Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints and from the Saints Wire is back with us. We talked about a couple New Orleans Saints players already, but today is special because first up, we're talking about a player in the defensive back room that had Malcolm Jenkins in it. He's no longer there due to retirement. but a first-round pick, number 11 overall pick via the New Orleans Saints in the 2017 draft, Marshon Lattimore, four-time Pro Bowler. He was Rookie of the Year in 2017 as well. This young man is talented, and I'm glad Ross is here to help us learn about what we can expect from Marshon in the upcoming NFL season. Ross, I'm glad you're back.
Hey, man, always glad to be here with you. There's something about New Orleans Saints pick 11 and Ohio State Buckeyes. It just seems to work out. It just seems to work out.
A little play on numbers there, hopefully. I'm curious. There's a way they could get a number 11, a number 11 pick next year on their squad. This young man's talented. I mean, I can say it about a lot of people you and I have talked about this year, last year as well. But what makes his talent be perfect for the Saints?
Well, there's a couple different things. I mean, his ability to be by himself on an island, lockdown corner, that is something every NFL defense needs in order to succeed. You look at the guys that have the big contracts right now, which include, of course, Marshon Lattimore. He got a big contract after week one. He finished up week one against the Green Bay Packers in Jacksonville, broke his hand, but still had enough strength in that hand to sign a humongous deal right after that game. Then you see like Jair Alexander this offseason. He's another one of those guys that's a lockdown corner that gets a big contract. That's what NFL defenses need to have. It's what gets drafted highly. It's why you saw guys like Derek Stingley come off the board, Sauce Gardner in this year's draft. Every NFL defense is looking for that. And the New Orleans Saints had theirs drop right into their lap at pick 11 a couple of years ago. And as you mentioned, a guy that would go on to be Defensive Rookie of the Year. So his on-field talent is huge. His fit in terms of scheme versatility as somebody that can play zone but can also play man and that's not afraid to man up and shadow a number one wide receiver, that's huge for Dennis Allen's scheme as well, which is a bit of a man-heavy scheme, but that also requires you to play a lot of man match and zone match coverages to where you're watching wide receiver patterns and then you're kind of reacting on an if-then kind of basis. And so you have to have a high mental processing ability, which Ohio State Buckeyes, that's one of the reasons why the Saints continue to go back to them, because these guys play at an NFL level all 3-4 years of college that they're there. And so that helps them translate. The last thing that I'll mention is his leadership. You mentioned former Buckeye Malcolm Jenkins, who retired this offseason. That kind of puts Marshon Lattimore into a leadership role in this in this defense, and particularly in the secondary. Now, a lot of people are going to point to Tyrann Mathieu, and that is true, but this is Tyrann Mathieu's first season with the team. This will be Marshon Lattimore's, since 2017. So for him, he ends up being now the most experienced secondary member. He ends up being the leader, the most educated leader, the person that knows the system more, the person that knows how to communicate the system, and the person that knows how to train up maybe some of these young defensive backs that are around on that secondary. So he has a lot of responsibility. That's one of the big reasons, and his comfort with that is one of the reasons why he fits into the culture.
Ross, the Saints, I've seen previously where they have had a left corner and a right corner. One guy stays on one side of the field, the other stays on the other. With Lattimore being the leader and being as good as he is there a position that he will play that could be more of a rover, like following the number one receiver on the opposite team?
I think there's absolutely a chance that you see more of that in 2022. We certainly saw a little bit more of it in 2021 because the guy that started opposite Marshon Lattimore last year was a rookie, and Paulson Adebo, who came in from Stanford. So I do think that you'll see that. He plays predominantly at sort of what you would call the right cornerback, which of course is defensive right, offensive left. And that tends to be the weak side for offenses, which is usually where that number one wide receiver or the split end will end up lining up. So for the most part, him playing over on that side of the field ends up putting him in that situation. But if you look at his corner splits, he played, if you look at just the cornerback snaps that he took, he played 81% over on the defensive right and then 19% over on the defensive left. So he still does a lot of moving around. And if you move over there and then you take a look at some of maybe like the split coverages as well, you could see a little bit of another like 10% over on the left side. So he'll do quite a bit to where he'll move around, but a lot of it is going to be dictated about where that number one wide receiver is and also who that number two wide receiver is as well. Because in some cases, like when you're lining up against, let's say, the Minnesota Vikings, you want to cover, Adam Thielen, or you want to cover Justin Jefferson. And for Marshon Lattimore, the answer is yes. Put him on whoever lines up in front of him, and he thinks he's the better. He believes he's the better player, and that's exactly the attitude you have to have.
81% one side on the right, 19% defensive left. You thinking more like a 70-30, or you thinking more like a 65-30 35, trying to get my math correct. So he puts
Yeah,
on top it and say, Jay, your math is horrible. Buddy, I'm talking while I'm trying to use my brain at the same time. It doesn't go well all the time. But
it's not a perfect science. It's not a perfect science.
Not. I wish it was. I make a lot more money. You can more 65, 35, 70, 30 on the splits as far as defensive right versus defensive left.
Yeah, I think maybe 70-30, 75-25, like 3/4 one side, 1/4 the other, just based upon the wide receiver talent that he's going to be facing this year. He has a lot of really, really good wide receivers that he's going to be going up against, including guys that are going to be rookies looking to make an impact immediately, like Drake London, but he's also going to find himself lined up across from guys like DK Metcalf and Devontae Adams again, now that he's in Las Vegas everything, right? So like, you know, it because of the talent of wide receivers and the caliber of number one wideouts that he's going to be matching up with in 2022, you might see him move around a little bit more.
What do you think about this leadership and him assisting Tyrann Mathieu being on the team now? You talk about Mathieu being down in the bayou. Great. He's back in the same area that he's wanted to be in for quite a while, I'm pretty sure. But how is he going to be able to assist Mathieu not just be a great teammate and be a great player, but also be someone that is filling the holes of a guy that Saints fans, people like yourself, Saints media, Saints players, they all loved Malcolm Jenkins.
Mm-hmm. And I think like because of the fact that it's Tyrann Mathieu, he's going to fill that gap a little bit of like who loves him already and everything as well. But I do think that the on-field sort of fill-in that Tyrann Mathieu is going to provide doesn't have to be 100% of what Malcolm Jenkins provided, because Tyrann Mathieu is a little bit younger. He's a little bit more versatile at this point in his career versus where Malcolm Jenkins' most recent stint with the Saints was in his career, which was 33, 34 years old, 32, 33 years old. And so because of that, you'll see Tyrann Mathieu do a lot of different things. You'll see him, take some of those free safety, deep center field snaps. You'll see him play down in the box. You'll see him play in the slot. So you see him move around a lot more than maybe you saw Malcolm Jenkins. So the on-field responsibility is going to be a little bit different, and it's going to be a little bit of a change for Dennis Allen's scheme, which really relies on that deep safety. But he's got Marcus Maye that can kind of help to fill that role as well, barring any, we got to figure out what's going to happen with his suspension. But the way that Marshon Lattimore ends up helping there is that no matter what, that side of the field is in the best case scenario, right? The safety help doesn't have to come over to Marshon Lattimore as much as maybe you might send that safety help over to Paulson Adebo, or to the heavier side of the field where you might have a 3-by-1 stack or placement by the offense. And based on that, Marshon Lattimore was probably lined up with the one that's all by himself. And you can let that happen over on that side of the field. So it makes Tyrann Mathieu's job a little bit easier in that case, maybe a little bit easier than what he experienced in Kansas City, whose defense kind of struggled in the passing game for many of the years that he was there, even though, let's not fake it, right? He still won a Super Bowl there. But I think that that's a piece that really helps him. The other piece is what happens off the field, what happens away from Sundays, practice, all of that. Those guys get to be leaders together, help each other translate the game to one another, and help them disseminate that information to the rest of the secondary.
Ross, this is fun, man. Any last comments about Marshon Lattimore and what we can expect from him in the upcoming NFL season?
I'm really excited about his year this year. I think that there are a lot of people that have accused Marshon Lattimore, I think maybe wrongfully, of being a little bit too inconsistent. I think there have been inconsistencies, but there are at that position. That's what it's like to play cornerback. And his short memory, everything that he's able to do, how quickly he gets over everything, him playing with a club on his hand for most of the season last year. I think this year is going to be a big season for him. And even for the folks that do believe that he's inconsistent, what they often say is that he always shows up against the best talent. And again, he's got a lot of really, really top tier wide receiver talent to match up with in 2022. So even for the folks that believe he's inconsistent, they should expect to see the best of Marshon Lattimore in 2022.
Ross, let the people know, because I could say it, but you say it so much better than I can. Where can they follow you on Twitter and then read everything that you write and listen to everything that you say about the New Orleans Saints?
Absolutely. You can find the Locked On Saints podcast free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. You can find all the written work over at saintswire.usatoday.com. And if you want to make it easier on yourself, you can find all of that and more on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA, NOLA.
So much fun. We're not done yet. There's more Saints players to talk about, because the Buckeyes, they make good talent. They develop them, and the New Orleans Saints love to bring them down south. Ross, thanks for coming on again. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Boom. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck right locked on in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. And joining us now here on Locked On Buckeyes as we continue our Buckeye road trip around the NFL, it is the host of Locked On Ravens, Mr. Kevin Oestreicher. Kevin, I hope I pronounced your name correctly this time. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. You got it 100%. All top marks from you, Jay. Pleasure to be talking with you here today.
Our Buckeye road trip around the NFL is a thrill to me every offseason. It's the second, I believe, offseason we're doing it, where we get to connect with not just Locked On NFL hosts, but also different people covering the NFL and discussing season expectations for former Buckeyes. It's unfortunate today that the player we're talking about was someone that suffered an ACL injury during a preseason game last year, Mr. JK Dobbins. How is Dobbins doing in his recovery?
Yeah, Jay, it was very unfortunate for the Ravens. He suffered that injury, and his recovery seems like everything's going to plan. Now, with these injuries, it's different with every situation. So one guy's not going to recover the same as the next guy. So you never really know until he's actually on the field 100%. But the Ravens have been historically, at least, especially recently, very cautious with their guys coming off of major injuries. So I think when looking at a player like Dobbins or even his running mate and Gus Edwards in the backfield who suffered the same injury, they're going to wait until they're fully 100% confident in themselves that they can go out there and perform. They're not going to rush anybody back. They're not going to say, hey, you're only at 75%. Well, we need you week one. Let's go out there. But Dobbins suffered the injury in the third and final preseason game against Washington on the first series of that play. In football, we all know football is a sport that injuries can happen on any given play, any given time. Even in practice, it happens. So you can never really predict them. Dobbins was a player that impressed during his rookie season. But for now, people are looking forward to that third season because it almost feels like we were robbed of seeing JK Dobbins in that second year, one that many people thought was a breakout. Instead, he was recovering from this terrible injury.
My anticipation for Dobbins after his rookie year in 2020 was last year he was going to eclipse the 1,000-yard mark in that season last year, and then also get 10 touchdowns last year as well. Unfortunately, we're just not talking about those things. Has he been able to do anything team workout, team oriented recently in his recovery as a slow process to get back on the field or to get back on the field in the fall?
Right. Yeah. So the Ravens are currently in the midst of their OTAs and mini camps. So they're kind of ramping up before training camp right now. And Dobbins has been seen on the field, just, standing there, not doing a ton, but he's caught passes from the jugs machine. So kind of, stationary work. So we haven't necessarily seen anything cutting wise or full sprint wise from him yet. But again, it's a process. He's been in the facility working. There's been videos of him, running in a pool. So it's just the process of the natural recovery. The ACL recoveries, especially just in general, the medicine has gotten a little better. So the recovery times have gotten a bit shorter. So what used to be maybe like a year injury has turned into like 9 to 12 months ish. But again, some people miss more than a year with the ACL. So you got to really, I think, keep that in mind if you're talking about JK Dobbins. But for now, there hasn't been necessarily a ton of work that we've seen from him on the field. But I think, again, any progress is progress. And I think everything from what we've been told and what we've heard is coming along smoothly.
Smoothly, good, because I was curious if there were any hiccups along the way in his recovery, but it sounds like things are going smooth so far.
Yeah, there haven't been any reports of any setbacks or anything, at least not that I've been able to see. And that's a good thing because sometimes, again, the ligament can recover slowly, or there might be another thing needed, where Baltimore's had to deal with injuries over the past year, where, for example, Ronnie Stanley's ankle, Nick Boyle's knee, where it doesn't heal necessarily the way that you want to, so there has to be cleanup surgery or another surgery on the ankle like Ronnie Stanley. So luckily for now, at least there haven't been, at least from what I've heard, any setbacks for Dobbins or what anybody else has been told, I think.
We're here with Kevin Oestreicher. He is the host of Locked On Ravens. And Kevin, during Dobbins' rookie year, which is the only time we got to see him on the field, what impressed you about him, not just running the ball, but also in the pass-catching game as well?
Yeah, he was such an electric player. And the funny part about all this, Jay, is that during the first 6 games of his season in his rookie year, he only had 25 carries. He was behind Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards on that depth chart. And historically, well, maybe not historically, but over the last couple of seasons, for the most part, the Ravens tend to value the veterans first over the rookies, unless it's like a top first round pick where you absolutely need that player there. Dobbins was a player that was picked at a position that wasn't a need for the Ravens in 2020. So they thought, yeah, look, this is one of the most talented backs in this draft. I thought he was the best. But regardless, you look at it, and the Ravens didn't have a need for JK Dobbins. It was stacking positional depth on positional depth. Now, Mark Ingram had 15 touchdowns the year before Dobbins was drafted. So, again, people are saying, well, why are the Ravens taking a running back in the second round? Well, Dobbins was just too talented on the board there to pass him up. But Dobbins, during his rookie season, during those 6 games where he had 25 carries, was ripping off runs. He had like his stat lines were like 1 carry for 31 yards or like 2 carries for 40. So like he was ripping off 30, 20-yard runs consistently, pretty much saying, hey, I need more playing time. And the Ravens gave him more playing time, ended up breaking the Ravens rookie touchdown record, led all running backs in carries his rookie season with 6 yards per carry. Every single running back in the NFL, he was at the top. The only person he trailed in yards per carry across the league was his teammate Lamar Jackson. So I think for Dobbins, his rookie season, he showed plenty of contact balance. I love just he bounces off defenders, refuses to go down, has a little bit of speed to him. He's not like a burner or anything, but I think he has deceptive speed that people underrate a little bit. I think what I'm really at least remembering from his rookie season, though, is the fact that he would just have a nose for the end zone, noses for first downs. And again, that contact balance that he just would not go down after first contact or even second, third, fourth. He would stay up, get that first down, and he's a hard runner.
He is a hard runner. Him and Gus Edwards, I think you mentioned this earlier, both got hurt last year. Who do you think gets the most carries in the upcoming season, assuming they're both healthy and ready to go week 1?
Yeah, it's a tough question, and it's one that I've kind of gone back and forth with because they're both super talented. But I think I'm going to give the edge to Dobbins by literally maybe like 10 or 15 carries. I think this will be a true running back by committee backfield, which I think it should be. Both players deserve an ample amount of carries. But you're right. This isn't if they're both healthy situation where ideally they'd both be 100% by week 1 and they'd be able to use them both. But there is definitely the question of, will they need to put one or both on the PUP list? Will maybe one have to miss the first 2 weeks and one is back, or is the other back? So if both are healthy and they can play a full 17-game season, I think Dobbins would edge out Edwards by probably 10 or 15 carries, but I wouldn't be shocked if it went the other way and you see Edwards having 10 to 15 more carries than Dobbins. Regardless, if both are healthy, I think they're both getting their fair share of carries. And a Baltimore offense that, again, is the most run-heavy offenses and one of the most run-heavy offenses in the league. So they'll be getting theirs in that offense.
It's still hard for me to comprehend. I hear it all the time. 17 games in the NFL regular season. I am so used to 16, 17 now. I've heard there's rumblings, better than I, of having an 18-game regular season. That's long, really, really long. So I'm still getting used to hearing a 17-game regular season myself, Kevin.
Yeah, it's fun because it took me a while to get the records down. I kept saying, 15-1, 14-2, but now it's 14-3 or 15-2. It's like all these weird records. And honestly, like when you're getting back into like the 12 win range, I want to say 12-4 instead of 12-5 or 11-5 instead of 11-6. So it is interesting that all this happens. And the 17th game last year actually wasn't a good one for the Ravens because Tyus Bowser tore his Achilles, just a cherry on top in the worst way of a terrible injury-riddled year for them. But yeah, the records still get me a little bit when I hear, it's not 16-0, it's 17-0 now.
Right. Kevin, this has been fun. If you could, let everyone know where they can follow you on Twitter and then catch your show as well.
Yeah, Jay, this was a blast. You can find me on Twitter at Oestreicher34, and then the Locked On Ravens account is at Locked On Ravens. We put out content on Locked On Ravens 5 days per week, and of course, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Kevin, this has always been fun, man. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jay.